Hello, everybody. Welcome to the November 12th, 2025 Budget Subcommittee. We will call to order and we will start with grants and gifts.
Yeah, you're in.
Thank you.
If you guys can't hear me, let me know. I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so I will just breathe.
You know, it was my time for that information that would have been helpful.
Yeah.
If you're hungry.
It's just like
These things are deep.
Thank you. To go through, picking up from last meeting, and so I'll try to go through as quickly as I can. First, under grants. So including in this update for grants, this fair share earmark funds for FY26. When I say fair share, it's the millionaires tax funds. Weymouth is getting a number of grants related to fair share, which is something we hadn't seen in the past. In the past, we received funds for the same funds that all districts received, whether it was universal meals or circuit breaker supplements. So now we have 4 specific earmarks for Weymouth. The first grant, not an earmark, that we're going to discuss is the support implementing of updated regulations regarding timeout practices. So Lindsay Jacobs at Seach is taking the lead on this one. It will benefit the district. And the purpose of this federally funded competitive grant is to support schools and districts in implementing strategies, interventions, and supports that promote full compliance with revised DESE regulations. The amount is still to be determined. And Meg, do you have anything you want to add on that grant?
Yeah, I mean, just more specific. So Lindsay Jacobs is kind of our expert in the district with collaborative problem solving. So she's working with the BCBA that's Seach to get some coaching and consultation around collaborative problem solving for primarily Seach, Pingree TLC, and then our TLC programs at the middle school and the high school to really support the therapeutic approach.
And if the committee recalls, we did apply for this grant last year.
I was just going to ask that.
Unfortunately denied last year, so hopefully we are approved this year.
So we've applied, we haven't been approved.
I don't know if they've submitted it yet. It's due this week, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted just following our policies and procedures with grants had to come here first before they could officially submit, which they will do.
Do we know a decision date when they'll have a decision date for that?
Do not, to be determined. Okay. Notification of award to be determined.
Okay.
It's due tomorrow.
It's due tomorrow.
Yeah, 2 weeks, but.
Thank you. Any other questions from the
committee? Fair share earmark. The first one we have is for CTE. It is $300,000. Provide further that not less than $300,000 should be expended to Weymouth Public Schools for materials, tools, equipment, technology, and educational resources that support teaching, learning, and educational development with the Weymouth Public Schools, vocational and career technical education program. Sam DePina is taking the lead on that. We had our CT advisory a couple weeks ago, and Sam took data from that, compared it with his ongoing capital improvements needs list, and is putting together a list of items that we'll report out once we have final approval.
That's great, especially where we went to this just recently. It would be nice to see some of those things checked off on that list.
Correct. The next earmark is a sizable one that Weymouth will benefit with 2 staff members, salaries being covered for the year. And it's provided that not less than $750,000 shall be expended to Weymouth Public Schools, of which $500,000 shall be expended for feminine hygiene products for public school buildings in participation with the program known as Free Period. So basically, we've worked with Gene O'Hare, and we're working with a local organization to provide feminine hygiene products across the state. And because we are the sponsor, the lead sponsor on this, it will cover certain salaries of staff involved. So that's a benefit for us this year for sure.
Will that, I know previously we've focused kind of on Chapman. Will that expand to the high school?
Correct.
And I know there's several students doing projects in that same realm. Is there any way we can have them collaborate with us as well.
Yeah, if we get their information, which I think I know one of them, we can connect them with
I have the update.
Gina and the woman, Kenzie.
3 through 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say that again?
Grade 3 through 12.
It's grade 3 through 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not, so staff too.
Grade 3 through.
Any other questions from the committee on that?
So those are ones that we applied for and we will wait on acceptance, or we already got those, the CTE and the.
So it's an earmark that's been, so we have to go through the paperwork of applying. So when these earmarks came about a couple of years ago, it was awkward how they're getting to districts of the funding. So what has been decided at the state level is that if it's an earmark to benefit a school district, it goes through DESE as a grant. So it's apply like we would any other grant. And so the CTE one and the one I just mentioned are both earmarked specifically for Weymouth Public Schools. They've been passed through legislation, and now it's just us going through the paperwork and applying, and then doing everything that we would for a typical grant.
Okay,
Going through expenditures, asking for reimbursement.
great.
Once we get the GAN letters, yeah.
Yeah, once we get the grant.
Previously, the free one, Senator O'Connor went to legislation and asked for that earmark. And that's how the whole thing started. And then he partnered with people.
The only other two I have, and again, they're both related to earmarks. Again, for FY 26 they're both for $10,000. And I'm just trying to find the language. One is for expanding CPR at the high school, $10,000, which will go towards equipment. And the other one is a $10,000 earmark for boys and girls. But the intent is to purchase new uniforms, whatever else they may need.
Boys and girls, I'm sorry,
Boys and girls rugby.
rugby.
So this comes about through earmarks that the legislation puts forward. So it's not like we seeked out specifically to benefit the rugby team. It's just that's how it came about as an earmark. And so Kristen, our AD, will work to expend those funds and for the benefit of the boys and girls rugby teams.
So if they were on the cycle this year to receive new uniforms, how does that work budgetarily? So if they
already.
Yeah, so if they were already budgeted to recycle this year.
It will, it's a good question. So these are all reimbursable grants now. So if we prove that we purchased this year already, then we would get reimbursed.
So we can ask that tomorrow night.
Yeah. I think they were on.
Yeah.
I think they were on that schedule.
That is all I have for grants and gifts.
Great. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the public?
I just wanted to know what the name of the feminine products one was.
It's the organization is called Free. It's free and then a period. They're all over social media if you just look into them. The woman's name is
Kenzie Blackwell.
Kenzie.
Blackwell. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And this existed last year.
Last year
as
too.
Danielle mentioned at Chapman last year.
I remember it from last year. It seemed very.
Moving on to athletic sponsorship program.
The only update, so the athletic subcommittee is meeting tomorrow night. The only update I have financially is that we're at approximately $30,000.
Right.
In the banner program.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for all your things. Any questions on the sponsorship update? On to audits and reports.
Great, thank you. First, briefly, we did, as we do every year, we went through our fleet of our vehicles. That's everything from our special ed vans to our maintenance vehicles to our, mowers and backhoes. We went through that audit on September 30th, and then we went through our IT audit of all of our equipment across the district. That audit's done internally by the Brian Connolly, internal auditor for the town, and it was both were successful audits. And then I'm going to share my screen. As we get into the packet here. First item is FY 23 end of year agreed upon procedures, AUP. So as the case with any audit, we bring it to the committee. this audit is, we call it an audit, it's really not, the auditors don't like to call it an audit, it's agreed upon procedures. It's for our end of year report for fiscal 23. As you may recall, we've had a number of changes in auditors over the last couple of years. We went from Melanson and Heath to Melanson to Markham, now to CBIZ. We've also had changes in the town at the financial levels of CFO, town accountant. So what's that resulted in is we're still working through some audits. We're working through amendments. We're currently working on the FY 24 audit. And then here we are in FY 26, the FY 25 books were just closed by the town last week. And so we'll begin that. We typically live in 3 years of auditing, reporting the prior year, managing the current year, and then building the next year. We're actually living in 6 or 5 years now as we wrap things up. And so there were several findings related to just numbers on lines. The bottom line numbers reported fine, but as is the case with any end of year report, we have up to 2 years to amend. So we were able to complete the amendments, but not in time for the final audit report. So they are findings, but as going through and meeting with the auditors and talking with the town, items that are in here are noted on the backup, and you will see as we go through the backup on page 4, it mentions amendments. We've since done the amendments. Page 5, the reallocation of certain expenditures per line. So we had to update Schedule 1 and move the expenditures to the appropriate line. And then page 7 is debt service costs, in particular interest expense. So that has been updated. And then tuition costs, which again, it was reallocating to the appropriate lines. So our bottom line reporting was accurate. And as is the case, every year we do amendments. It's just unfortunately the timing of the amendments, we couldn't avoid it as a finding in the audit. And as we finish FY 24 and 25, we'll bring those to the committee as well.
Do you see any underlining issues for 25 for that, or that?
No, I think now that we have, CBIZ has in place that we've been working with. We have a new CFO, a newer CFO, and then a fairly new town accountant, and then obviously my staff in the finance office all working together on audits. I think we're in good shape now.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Brian, so I heard you say that even though there might have been an error on the specific lines, those dollar amounts elsewhere, they were just not sent.
Correct.
When it said we did not report a $3 million interest
on that line,
that it was elsewhere.
Correct.
So the bottom line for any of the 3 lines.
And for 23, and we've already amended it. So for the 23, it's already been amended. So as you know, DESI reports 2 years lagging. But again, by the time they did this report, even though we had completed it and we gave them the backup, they won't go. That's what the auditors do. They won't go back and say, oh, well, they gave us the updated information.
Will they'll eventually though catch up on DESI?
Will it eventually?
So like if we went right now and looked at the DESI finance.
We've done the 23 amendments already.
It's already there.
Correct.
Thank you. Moving on to financial assistance.
Make a change to this, just to make it more in line with school committee policy and our own procedures. This bolded line right here, your building principal will determine whether a fee reduction or payment plan is appropriate. It wasn't clear that it was the principal's discretion. It's almost seemed like a choice. You could choose to waive it if you wanted to waive it. So again, all of our fees, if students or families are certified to the direct certification process through the state, meaning they're on some sort of state assistance, they're automatically, we capture them as free or reduced. This is for that segment of people that may not be captured in direct service. It could be could have been a recent loss of a job, something to that effect, where the principal has the discretion to work with families on a payment plan, or ultimately if they choose waiving a fee altogether. But we wanted to make sure that it was clear in the form that that's the discretion of the principal.
When you and I met too, we talked about how the fee collection has really increased. And I appreciated your answer because I asked why we thought that increased, and you said expectation, process, and communication.
Oh, thank you.
I thought that was a great way to show that you guys are working really hard to close that gap.
Yes, I appreciate that. And we have found that, pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, we just, things got lax and we had funding. And so it is, like you said, bringing back that expectation and process and communication.
Shown a great improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on that piece of the agenda? On to contracts and procurement.
The only update for contracts procurement is we had already, we were going to report this out last meeting, we entered in a contract with Norfolk Kitchen and Bath to do the cabinets, counters, and storage for the 7 new modular classrooms. They're in production. They should be delivered any day. And the goal is likely, just because guys need to get in there and install, it will likely be over a couple of Saturdays between now and the winter break, or it will be during the winter break that the guys will get those cabinets and counters installed in the 7 modular classroom.
So no impact to students or staff?
No, we don't.
That's great. Oh, moving on to fiscal year 27 budget planning.
26.
26, yeah.
Oh, sorry, you might have a,
I have both.
you
I
have
have
both.
both. I have both. I have the old one and the new one, sorry.
So FY26 updates. So just a brief update, because there's a lot on our listservs about the government shutdown. Obviously, those folks are aware that November 7th, Governor Haley directed full SNAP benefits to be processed. As it more specifically relates to us, school meal funding update claims are continue to be paid at least through December, and if the federal shutdown were to continue. So regardless, it sounds like it's coming to an end here, but even if it didn't, we are paid currently through the end of December for our school meal funding. And if it ends, it will continue as it was.
We talked about staffing requests, but did you want to talk about that in fiscal year 27 or current?
We're going to talk about that current.
Okay.
So under the new staffing request. So projection, first I just want to touch on the projection for a moment. So we did, as we do every year, and this is based on the heels of, news from other districts locally, falls in the current year budget. So as we do every year, we do several projections throughout the year on October, November, one February timeframe, and then one near the end of the school year. So as of right now, we are balanced for FY26 budget. But that includes, which we'll go over in a moment here, a number of positions that we've added since last June when we approved a budget on this sheet here. So I'm just gonna download this so folks can see it. But it is in your packet. And it should look familiar to folks. We started using this last year as our compliance list, as well as our future planning consideration list. So you can see the highlighted, we've added roughly 10 positions totaling $332,000. we have projected funds to cover that this year, one time. So the conversation then becomes, as we start building the FY 27 budget, will those positions need to remain? And if so, then they become part of our level service budget ask. So what we're looking to do now is, given that we have a balanced budget for FY 26, as of right now, no additional funding to support any new positions for compliance without some further conversations and discussions. What we're doing is bringing to the committee a proposal for a position that once the committee has heard it, Melanie and I will work with the town to see, you know, what funding could we use one time to get this position funded for this year. This hasn't happened in Weymouth, I think, since 2014. This was, I don't know if anyone remembers back then, it was a pretty common practice that mid-year you might have to go to the town. So when we don't have any funding source identified yet, once we can identify a funding source, we will post the position, but we wanted to bring the position here to discuss tonight and go from there. So I'll actually ask Meg just to jump in and just talk about the need and justification for the position and what the position will be.
So the particular position that's not on there is we do want to add an ABA ESP to our TLC program at Pingree. It would be a classroom support position. We have had, at the beginning of the year, we started out with 11 students between the two classrooms, and pretty soon we'll be up to 15. They've had a couple of kindergarten students in addition to a move-in and some other in-district referrals. So we're really working at kind of increasing independence with students, trying to avoid one-to-ones whenever possible. So this is really to be proactive in providing that support for the classroom with an ABA that has more of that expertise in behavior interventions. And then also making sure that the staff have the time they need to, you know, throughout their day, they get their breaks, they get their lunch, they're able to support the students going into inclusion. And also if there's any dysregulation, that there's enough support for the staff to safely manage the students. So it would be an additional position to the classroom staff that's there. It would allow for the teacher and 2 paraprofessionals in each of the classrooms. And then we do have a float ABA already. That's something we've done in some of the other buildings that we've found really successful, because again, they can be more proactive with the strategies and support keeping kids in our district.
What are we looking at for salary? What are we going to be looking at for asking?
So the ABA grid, Jeremy, off the top of your head.
40 to 50. I can pull it up for you in just a second here.
And here's another tricky question. What are the chances are we actually find someone that would take that position?
So I will say this year we've had really good luck finding ABAs. I think you find people that maybe work in private ABA centers and they're looking to come to school districts. So we've actually had a lot of success for finding the ABA positions. They tend to be attractive to people.
So would it be considered, where it's starting mid-year, would it be considered a long-term temporary position, or would it be something that we would build it into the budget permanently?
Correct. So like these positions, it's a good question. So like these positions here, Tracy, once we've identified funding, we will fill the position, post-fill the position. It will come on this list as an additional position we've added, and then be part of the conversation of level service for next fiscal year.
So these are actual people right now?
Correct. If they're highlighted, we've hired.
So do they get their pink slip in April, May? And then
they would
hire them back?
Would be compliance positions, correct?
Right. So will we know before that they need them for the next year?
Unless say IEP changes, we would assume that.
And we have to recognize that the district's needs have significantly changed, especially related to this. And I feel like even if they did change at Pingree, they would be used somewhere else. There's definitely a need for ABA. My question would be, what was the decision for ABA versus RBT? And does the BCBA have enough support to support an additional staff person there?
Is this an ABA position or an RBT?
Not RBT.
So typically it's an ABA position, and then sometimes we say RBT preferred. So an RBT could take that position, but it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement. Our two district RBTs, we did say they needed to be an RBT because they're in all of our schools. So we felt that was really important to have that.
But from a funding standpoint.
So they've both had the same training, but then an RBT, they have to pass an exam and they have ongoing automatic supervision. We provide that through our BCBA.
A BCBA has to oversee an RBT. They do not
Yeah.
have to oversee an ABA. They should, because that's kind of their line of work, but they don't have to. They're not regulated to.
And what grade is it? Is it?
It's my question. Grade.
This is for pin grade. So the whole program is K-5, but this will be allocated towards the younger classroom.
So when they go to,
K through
say that, when they say go to the next grade, is that person gonna move with them? So then, you know what I mean?
So
They
right
travel with them.
So right now, we have one class that's the K-2. So this class has the teacher and one para, and then this would be the second para. And we've just seen the need for that behavioral expertise. So that's why we're saying, let's make this an ABA. The second classroom already has 2 paras attached to it. And then we have a float ABA that goes in between the program. So that way it gives them some flexibility if there are students in the upper level program that need more of that behavioral intervention, that they can do that. Right now, because they're kind of thin, that float ABA really ends up being tied to specific students for their inclusion or what they need. So the float is not really functioning the way we would like. So this will give them more of that direct support so the float can be more proactive and support some of that.
But will they, so you say it's like 2 grades together, you said K1. So when they go to 2, 3, will they move with them and then we'll need someone else? You know, because I know it's better for consistency with them.
It would depend on what moves
Kids. Yeah,
and what's on their IEP.
right, okay.
And Tracy, when we get to the forecasts and scenarios, I think it'll better answer your question about, you know, how are these positions treated as we plan next year's budget. So we'll come back to that for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Meg, did you say that it was because of an increase in student inbounds that were increasing the student population from the beginning of the year, or was it because of increased, escalated behavior challenges or both?
The number of students, I mean, I think we are seeing across the district an increase in just the complexity of student needs, but we have one student that's being referred for out of district. But even beyond that, we've had actually 5 students enter in. So a net of 4 additional students in September entering into the program.
We're seeing a lot come back from ABA centers, correct? Yeah.
So in our communication enhancement programs, we've had 11 students in KN1 that we did not have on our rosters in the spring of last year. And 5 of those came from ABA schools.
Which is good. We want that, but it
So
does
these
increase
are
support.
firms where parents had enrolled them in an ABA program outside of the district, but for whatever reason.
And then they decide to,
And one more question.
Yeah.
Do the schools still have their crisis response teams made up from within the staff in each of the buildings, or did those dissolve or disappear? Or
Sit teams.
So we have sit teams, and then there's usually the principals would identify, say, the safety care trained staff within each building. Because of TLC, all the staff in that program are safety care trained. So it's the staff that are working with those particular students that would respond. But in all of our buildings, the principals have designated the safety care staff so they know if they need that de-escalation or physical management, who the staff are in the building to respond.
Any other questions? No.
So we will we'll now take next steps to identify funding. We talked about the operating budget, which is balanced for this year, as is any year, whether it's breakage, circuit breaker, earmarks, transfers, free cash, stabilization funds. There's a myriad of different funding sources that can be looked at during the course of the year. So we will next talk with the mayor's office on how we want to approach, and either in years past, it sometimes has gone to council for a measure, or funding has been identified within the town budget that can address the need for this year. So we will come back and let the committee know how we landed, but this is just one step in that process.
What do you think the turnaround will be?
So that's a good question. My conversation tomorrow will be where is this going to go? Funding wise, in the meantime, we've talked with the principal, making sure there's coverage in the building to cover the need of the position until the position is posted and filled.
Did you say you would come back to us if it does go to town council? Because I feel like we could have some conversations to educate town council on what this actually means.
Yep. If it has to go to council as a measure, absolutely. We're hoping, this is the first we've seen of this in a while, so we're hoping that there could be some funding that we can access fairly quickly here.
I think it's important too to stress that if we fund this, we're not funding an out-of-district placement, because if it is a compliance issue and we can't fulfill it, we're paying for an out-of-district placement. I think that's a.
And what is the ticket price for that as opposed to?
Be a lot more.
Right, I think that.
Without transportation.
Yeah, they need to understand that too.
Yep.
And this is also a process.
It's not a least restrictive environment. They should be here with their supports in place. They shouldn't. Moving up, go ahead.
Next, to that point, wouldn't then the money that was being paid out as the program tuition or charge be now not being expended for the return child or children? Funding is available.
It's wildly different. It's the tuition is wildly different than a ABA. It's like could be a $60,000 difference, not including transportation. It's a pretty significant amount. And that's without even knowing if they're going to go up with their tuitions, because there has been talk in the past of them increasing tuition. So
then I know I mentioned this before, but these mid-year funding requests are routine for fire and police. So even though the school department hasn't had one since 2014, it's happened on a regular basis to fill funding gaps for the fire department and the police department almost every year. So
no piles, no.
necessary thing. They plug gaps for departments even double.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into. He got it. Why can't we?
Right. Okay. Anything else?
I just want to clarify, I'm just going to follow all the info. So just to clarify, we need to ask downtown for some help for $332,901.
Nope.
No.
Well,
Okay.
No, this is.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm wrong.
For next year, it's part of our level service budget request for next year.
Oh.
But we've funded through, our budget projection this year. We had funds that we could allocate to this. And so those positions are all funded for this year. We're asking for an additional position that we don't have funding for, and then they'll all be part of the conversation for FY27.
Okay, that clarifies everything for me. Thank you.
If you kind of put it in terms of what happened at neighboring districts, they probably didn't do this. They just went ahead and funded those positions without looking for funding sources. And then they ended up in a deficit that their school committee didn't know about.
So you're really only looking for one position.
Correct.
Which is not a big deal.
Yeah.
This time.
Right.
Right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully no more. Ready to go on?
Yes.
Thank you. FY27 budget planning. So as the case each year, one of the first things we look at is OSD rate. Estimated increase for chapter 766 private school tuition. So OSD sets the rate each year. They've set a rate of 3.04% increase for next year, which when we get into advocacy, we'll talk a little bit about that OSD setting the rate. But basically what that is, we're just talking about tuitions for chapter 766 schools. They're kind of come in with at least a 3.04% increase in their tuition request. I remember a couple of years ago, it was double digits. 14%, thank you. So as it relates to advocacy, there is a lot of advocacy, superintendents, meetings. You see it all over the state. And the focus this year is around strengthening the special ed circuit breaker program, fixing the Chapter 70 inflation cap, fully reimbursing transportation costs, further mitigating charter school and traditional public school impacts, making targeted investments in staffing and programs needed to best support mental health. Mel, superintendent and I were in a meeting a couple weeks ago, and we had someone from MASS there talking about advocacy. And a couple comments were made. Chapter 70 review, last time this was done was 10 years ago. So the advocacy of making sure that, you know, that people are taking it serious because it doesn't come around that often. Circuit breaker being fully funded. You know, there's the push of the 75%. There was talk of, and this isn't anything that's happening yet, but talk of one time maybe fair share funds, making that 75% a 90% reimbursement one time. And then the AG's office, IG's office, they're getting involved in a couple of fronts. One is, as I just mentioned, the OSD rate, you know, questions of, you know, OSD sets the rate. You know, if DESE is the authority on these schools, why is OSD setting the rate? It shouldn't DESE have some involvement? So, and also transportation in particular for special ed, just looking at the process, the pricing. So the IG's office is taking an interest in not only special education, but transportation across the board to make sure that it's following procurement and that we're getting best pricing that we can get in districts.
There is, for advocacy, there's a virtual public listening session for Chapter 70 on November 18th from 4 to 7. I signed up for that. I can send the email out to anybody that wants it too. They send you something back to say if you want to testify, written testimony or on virtual, you can also do that too.
Okay. We put our name on that.
Did you? I figured you did.
Notification.
Myself, Brian, you're on that.
Okay.
Advocacy list. That they compile the policy.
Oh, yes, yes.
Extraordinary relief.
All right.
And the last piece, just on grants there. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the last piece on that update is grants. I think I was gonna report this out the last meeting, so I don't know if I have yet. We're also tracking, in addition to all of our budget impacts, the potential impact of Title I being reduced 25% and Title II, III, IV being eliminated. That would have an impact of roughly $500,000 to Weymouth Public Schools if that were to happen in FY 27. So just one more piece. On a per pupil. So the reports are in there. Again, this was for last meeting. We do this each year, just update the committee. I apologize, the headings kind of lost some of their luster there. But basically our per pupil expenditure for 23, the most recent year reported, is $18,245. That's in district expenditures per pupil. And then when you factor in out of district, that number goes up to $19,798. And on the net school spending compliance, you can see here, this is from July 2025. It shows our information related to net school spending. If we go to the second page here, you can see our actual net school spending as a percent of foundation, 111%. Obviously, you'd want to be 100% or more. And if you get below 90%, you're in trouble with DESE. Just, I know we talk about it often. We're about 245 out of 319. So bottom third for reporting purposes of net school spending.
45 out of what?
319. Which we talked about the number of it's the spending, but it's also, I believe, to be a function of the flaws in the Chapter 70 and the reporting of the or the calculation of foundation enrollment. So again, hopefully for advocacy, all these things are looked at the state level.
Any questions on that? Go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. Those are the right numbers, but just in terms of context or comparison, so, you know, our 19,000 per pupil spending is a little over $2,000 per pupil below the state average. And when you talk about we're in the bottom third when it comes to medical spending rankings, it's actually more than that. One never broken the 12th percentile, which means that almost 90% of the districts in Commonwealth spend more money on a basis, on an school spending percentage basis than Weymouth has had, and that's historical. You know, I've shared with you the graphs and the data that I pulled from DESI, and you've seen the dives that we've taken and how far we trail behind the average expenditures on a per pupil basis, on a net school spending basis. So I just want to highlight that the differences we've never been anywhere near the state average or anywhere near what our neighboring communities spend on schools.
Do they, it's not dark districts, right? It's all districts? Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
So it could be compared to Newton Wellesley.
Yeah, but even if you compare ourselves to the dark districts, they're well above us too. It's not, it isn't a pretty picture. It hasn't been a pretty picture. 12 years ago, we were third from the bottom of the district.
Yes, for some reason Cambridge is in our dark, which is they're 36,000, I think, a student maybe. All right, I think the last is the forecast and some scenarios. I think is why we're all here tonight. Maybe. All right, each year, we started this several years ago, we do our budget forecast. You know, it led to things as, you know, identifying the fiscal cliff. And so we basically take a lot of historical information and what we're seeing now is, you know, the fiscal cliff is now becoming the perfect storm of historical fiscal pressures. And so when we update our 5-year, we take our current year budget, we incorporate a number of assumptions, historical assumptions, and it gives us a forecast for the next 5 years. And it's really all the existing staff and expenses we have, apply a number of assumptions, and you get these numbers. These aren't necessarily what our numbers are going to be, but it's been a pretty good indication. And I think one area you can look at is that, you know, we're projecting our level service right now to be 3.87. To put it in context, the last 10 years, we've received an average of 3.82% a year for the last 10 years, totaling over $28 million in increases. So we're looking closely at what we think drives that it's, you know, it's typically 3.82%. I think a lot of it, not a lot of it, but one factor has been the positions we add each year that we've added through unprecedented economic growth over the last 10 years. So as we look at the forecast, it helps Mel and the team formulate what we might think will be level service next year. We haven't gone through the budget process. We don't know exactly yet what level service will be, but we have a pretty good idea what we think it's going to be. And then we factor in the positions we just talked about. So before I move from the forecast into scenarios, does anyone have questions on the forecast?
Does your forecast include, I guess this is a two-part question. Mm-hmm. With our change to our checking our admissions at 5th grade and 9th grade,
which is best this year.
Do you think that will change your forecasting because you'll have better numbers at those?
No, we don't think so.
We're not seeing it in other districts. You know, we've seen a handful, but nothing that would be that dramatic.
That dramatic, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Brian, is the forecast? I know that typically you want to put it on the table and all that, but you got 4 collective bargaining units that are up for negotiation. Unit A in particular is going to be the largest one. Does this level service forecast include some number that factors in what an ultimate agreement increase might be for Unit A? Year 27, 28, 29.
Good question. It factors in what historical COLAs have been over the last 15 years.
Yeah. Because thanks.
All right. Let's flip our screen back here. So, and the superintendent jump in at any point. I think our goal here this year was to really be transparent and timely in information. We developed this last year. But I think in talking with Mel, it's really want to get ahead of scenarios, and I can speak more details of the scenarios. If you want to talk about.
I think Brian and I going through the process last year, we were doing these things. We kind of had these plans in our heads and in our conversations, but we really didn't push them out there. So we want to make sure that everybody's seeing them ahead of time. So you look at level service, that's what Brian's been talking a lot about. One of the things that we didn't really include last year in level service was the addition of staff, right? Because technically level service, a lot of times people think it's like, you know, it's your budget from last year, you know, and then what's that cost us this year? But it's really different because after the budget is approved, then we, like Brian just showed us, added so far $330,000. So that's part of our level service when we ask for level service. So those are the things. And when we outline this, I'm trying, this document will change, right? So this is just the first meeting, trying to give everybody an explanation of what level service means for our district. Talks about kind of maintaining what we're currently doing here in Weymouth Public Schools. The strategic investment budget, that is like when we're trying to come up with a strategic plan, right? Which was what we're working on moving forward. The strategic plan is a working document. It's something that we're always striving for. And this part of this budget, we saw kind of under our needs list last year, right? So when we're meeting with all of our principals, when we're talking about what things do we think could drive improvement in Weymouth, and that's kind of our needs list. So we start to outline that for everybody. And you'll see that we're talking about some of the things that we've been talking about with more social emotional supports, the STEAM teachers or math and STEM coming back to the elementaries, assistant principals that we lost. So you'll see all of those things as part of a strategic investment. And the reason why we're using strategic investment is because it's part of our strategy, right? It's our strategic plan over the next 3 years. We hope to, if we don't get some of those positions next year, then we hope in the second year maybe we get those. And so prioritizing and being very transparent about what we're kind of working towards as a large group here. And then lastly, the reductions budget. Again, this was something we were working on constantly last year, right? When we're hearing numbers and we're not sure what those numbers are. The hard part is the reductions budget is something that we're always thinking about because they're people's lives, they're livelihoods. So when you think about a budget and like, let's say we present to school committee and we say, well, we've got 3 budgets. Let's see, you know, what everybody wants. And the longer we wait, I know we've talked about the timing that we have at town hall. The longer we wait, the harder it is for the people that are going to lose their jobs. So those are the things we're trying to be thinking about and transparent about. We hate to scare people and cause that anxiety, but those are the unfortunate things that we will do through the process for transparency. And, you know, you'll see this document start to get a little bit bigger. It becomes a little bit clearer. You know, when you start to put people's positions on this document, it gets very nerve-wracking for our district. It starts to ripple down into our classrooms, our students, you know, students and parents saying, oh, my child came home and said their teacher might lose their job. So those are all of the things that we're trying to avoid. And while being transparent for everybody, we just don't want to cause that anxiety, any more anxiety for our staff and our students. But this document will be the document that we work with and that we're, you know, transparent at the table with.
And just a couple details and then obviously any questions. So the level service, as we mentioned, this is comprised of, as of right now, what we forecasted, the 3.87 plus these new positions gets us this number here. So it's actually 4.24% when you add in those new positions. The level service number will, as we go through the budget process, will change, I don't think drastically. And as we go through the budget process or the school year, positions may get added. So that number will go up or down accordingly. This strategic investment budget is again level service plus everything on this list. So it's this compliance, but it's also these positions here. So that's how, as we go through the budget year, we can follow that number. And the final number, when we talk about a $2.9 million reduction, it's taking level service, it's taking our level service number and then only getting 1% versus the requested 4.24. That's where the 2.9 million comes from. And the reason why we're using the 1% right now is that that's the best information we have right now on what new revenue looks like for next year. As that number changes the process, we will change it. So this will really be a barometer as we go through the budget year of these different scenarios will change accordingly based on the inputs we're getting through the budget process.
And Brian, if you can go back up to the level service, again, kind of focusing on that, those additions of positions, we've been forced to cut positions. So as you can imagine, we've very much vetted through these positions. What we're seeing trending, Meg had reference to the complexities of our students. We don't foresee any of those positions going away or not needed moving forward. So that's why it's so important to talk about level service as we are right now today. And we're still talking about adding a position. It's pushed through.
That's it.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Go ahead.
And I don't know if you want, I'm just thinking if we're recording, do folks want to come up to I just don't
The
know.
mic,
I don't know if it's picking people up.
is anybody on?
We're doing webinar.
Oh, right.
But it's also recording too.
Awesome. First off, thank you for just laying this out. This is great. It's really nice to kind of see it laid out. Oh, sorry, Ben Crosby, 28 Norman Ave. Come find me. No,
We know where you live.
So I really appreciate you kind of laying this out. That 1% number is a little, I'm glad it's early. I'll just put it that way. So the only thing that I wanted to kind of jump on with this is more of kind of like taking a suggestion because I like it. And it's thinking about for lack of a better term, the marketing of it. And because what's going through my head too is as I've said to Brian too many times, the thing that I dislike about level service is it's kind of a moving baseline year over year over year. Your baseline changes every single year to what it was last year. And part of me wonders, I'm not trying to ask you to do too much extra work, but I wonder if there's something between level service and strategic investment that is a return to budget, or something, because what we're saying is we've now gone through 2 to 3 years of seeing certain services have to get cut. We've obviously shifted money and the spending has still continued to increase, but we've had to shift it to various things, and certain services that we used to provide are not able to be provided anymore. And I wonder if when it gets presented to those who need to see it is this isn't aspirational. This is how do we get back to where we simply were a couple of years ago and offering the services that we once did. And that's one of the things that was going through my head. If that jives with anyone's brain, that could be beneficial when presenting to other stakeholders to kind of have that kind of framing of it of, a return to what we should be doing.
It's a good point, which we know on the list is the APs, and coaches.
Yeah.
And a BCBA.
We'll take it.
And a BCBA.
And we do look at too, Ben, that where we were was also sponsored and funded by ESSER, which we know was COVID relief, right? Returning to. So, there was always a thought process that this is a bucket of money to get you back there. It was never a feeling, although it became a feeling pretty fast, that this is who we are now. Whereas we thought from the very beginning, this is something to get us back on track, back to normalcy, which I don't think we're ever going to get there. But that was the thought process of that kind of one-time funding. That did add those positions, and it's tough to lose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that context. I think really where I'm coming from is an angle of influence to tug on the ears and heartstrings and emotions of people rather than the logic. Because your logical response I completely understand, but people seem to respond better to emotional tugs nowadays than that. And so that's why I think I'm thinking about how we frame that.
Yeah, and even the way this looks right now is informational. So as it starts to develop, aspirational scenario gets removed. It's just the beginning of making sure everybody understands what a strategic investment budget looks like. That makes sense too.
Absolutely.
I don't want them to think, the town to think we're you know, in the la la land of rainbows and unicorns, and this is what we really would love to have, but never get kind of thing.
Right. No, I agree, but I think it's important also that people know that we also have a vision.
100%.
You know, and so that's where I completely agree with it. Is maybe is aspiration not the right word? Sure, but like we have a vision and we want, you know, the students produce our town's legacy.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. Anyway,
I appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
Can I rewind for 1 second? And this is probably a question for you. How many district-wide RBTs do we have at this time?
So we have 2 district RBTs that
Yeah.
float amongst the schools, and then we have additional float ABAs for certain schools, like one at Hamilton, one at West Gusset.
So the float RBT for Hamilton is really
For him.
for Hamilton,
Hamilton.
not
Yep.
for everywhere.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Ashley, did you have something?
Yeah. Hello, Ashley Dickerman, 846 Pleasant Street. Just a couple of things going through my mind. Sometimes when Ben talks, it gives me ideas. Or just talking points. So I agree with Ben. I'm glad it's early in the year and I appreciate the transparency from you guys, like seeing last year's budget process and how things have changed over time. I definitely feel like there's more understanding on my end. And I think a lot of other people's ends too. So as we approach like a new budget year, and luckily we do have Rebecca, who's going to be on town council. I think she's going to be really helpful in like bridging the gap between town council and here. And one thing that I had mentioned at one point to Gary McDougall was, why don't we, you know, we have the budget committee on the other end that doesn't typically meet. And I told him off the record, and Johnny Kono's at the pizza shop, I said, why don't we proactively meet a couple of times a year? Like, let's not wait until people are mad or heated or upset. Like, let's build these relationships while people are not in the depths of the budget. Does that make sense? So something I would really like to see is just meeting with downtown at least twice a year, just to kind of check in. And just
we do that though. We do that. I think just because they're not public meetings, we all have our relationships with town council, with the mayor, with the chief of staff. We do that. And Brian and Alyssa meet with them pretty frequently. Just because they're not out there doesn't mean it doesn't happen. You know, those conversations are continuously happening.
But there is a subcommittee that can meet publicly.
But that would be their subcommittee, not ours.
Okay.
We wouldn't go to their subcommittee. I mean, we could go to the audience, but they don't really.
But they meet the subcommittee.
They also don't allow people to speak, so it's not really the same. It's not like ours. Their subcommittees are very wildly different than ours. They don't allow public participation. They don't really open it up to anybody. So even if we're elected officials, I mean, we don't get recognized at Veterans Day. Well,
yeah,
we won't get recognized at a meeting.
I guess I just want to understand more of how that subcommittee works, because in my mind it's like, well, why have it if we're not meeting? Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's
their subcommittee, not ours, though.
Right,
yeah,
but
we're not allowed to go to this. It's not open to us.
It's not like it's dictated by the charter too. It's their members, not.
Yeah, I guess I just need some more context around what those subcommittees mean.
Well, they'd make those chocolate chip cookies.
And then the other thought process, a random thought that I've had, and I don't know if it's not really like, I guess it's just a comment, and maybe people will agree or disagree, but like the ESSER funding was such a gift. And it makes me think like, oh, if we could just have ESSER funding all the time, like how can we communicate to the higher ups like, hey, the ESSER funding was great. Can we like keep that rolling?
I don't want another pandemic. I don't know if anybody else does.
I don't want a pandemic, but it was almost like that was the money that we needed to keep thriving. Like, how can we get it back? Obviously, the Chapter 70 funding fix would be fantastic. Maybe that is the ESSER money that I'm hoping for. But does that make sense? Like after coming to the budget subs over and over again and like hearing in my mind, I'm just like, ESSER funding. We just need it all the time. How can we make it happen?
Yeah, we agree.
I think the Fair Share Act conversations that are happening could be some of that
Could be a help.
one time each year. They can kind of say one time money each year and address the need. So like that would probably be the only avenue we'd see is blessing curse of ESSER money. But I think Fair Share Act, like I mentioned earlier, the circuit breaker, if they're able to further fund circuit breaker through Fair Share and not commit to it every year, but hey, they'll take it year by year, that would certainly benefit us.
Right, and that's something that we can still advocate for as well, right? Because there was that other bill, I forget the number, maybe you know the number. As or blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm following it on the government website. I'll have to go back and look it up. I haven't seen anything in my inbox about it, but okay.
The hard thing too actually is the one-time funding, right? So even though it's great to have like a little bit of that relief, we can't plan for it. We can't staff for it. It's
One and done.
yeah,
Right.
it's really, really
I
hard.
think
to
if
project.
we got those funds back, I think we would do things
Yeah.
a lot different than we did when we did get those funds. So I think
Districts.
that too.
Yeah.
Right.
You'll see
Didn't
some of
play
the
by
districts
Brian's
that use
rules.
ESSER money to fund more positions. That's where some of them are struggling if they weren't slowly reducing those positions as the money was going on.
Yeah.
We're always grateful for you, Brian. There's no one in Weymouth that's not grateful for you.
Oh, it's team. Appreciate it.
But yeah, I appreciate the transparency. I'm looking forward to working more with downtown. Of course, I know that you guys have relationships with downtown. I don't doubt that for a second. I'm just wondering how those subcommittees could just bridging that gap for the public, you know, for me, for the public, seeing that in real time, I think would be so helpful. Does that make sense? And just further.
It does. Their subcommittees, like I said, are run so wildly different than us.
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
It's definitely,
No-
they don't even meet that often
Predictions.
compared to us. So
They're allowed to sit.
I think they need work versus us.
Well, and I'm just so
can't meet
excited
unless
about
it's-
Rebecca being on because she's just gonna be able to take all of that she's learned here and, you know, continue to bridge that gap for us. So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead. Want to come up, Gus?
Thanks.
The salt is starting to hit me.
The salt, it's swollen. Those dogs.
And just when I think that you couldn't do the job better, you do the job better. Talk about Melanie and Brian and Melissa, the whole team, everybody. You know, this document is super helpful. But I think you know, to talk about what Ben and Ash were talking about, I told Mayor Hedlund and Ted Land, the chief of staff in this room last year, that they were here too late. That the conversations about a 1% budget, which I think is what's going to happen, and a $3 million cut, can't happen in April, and you can't provide a list of positions that are being cut for the public in April, because then you're not going to get public advocacy and involvement in terms of, you know, reactionary public involvement. And even if you did, April and May is way too late. The decisions, as you all know, are being made now. I'm hearing from departments that Town Hall has said 1% is going to be it. I don't know if they've officially sent a communication, Mel and Brian, about the fact that that is the expected limit for increases for fiscal year 27.
No memo yet, but we were told to prepare.
Right.
And
I'm hearing that from other departments. So I mean, that bottom one is probably the reality. We've known for a few years that it was going to get uglier and uglier. Last year was rough. I think fiscal year 27 is going to be probably the ugliest that we've seen in a while, since probably 2008. But my point in all this is, I know you'll keep doing it, but it has to be communicated to the public. The realities of this have to be communicated to the public by you, not just at budget sub meetings, but at school committee meetings. And I know you're having all those internal conversations with your counterparts on the town side, but and we'll have the conversations with the town side with Mike, but with Mayor Melise, those need to be public as well, and they can't be communicated in April and May. It's completely ineffective to do that. I think everybody knows that 1% $3 million cut budget is the likely scenario for fiscal year 27, and everybody just needs to put that on the table and be crystal clear about it now. I agree with you, Melanie, and we talked about this before. The strategic investment budget or that excellence budget, you know, is rainbows and unicorns. It's not going to happen. When we're talking about $3 million cut, we're not going to be looking at
This year.
this year. Well, in the foreseeable future, the way things are looking, right? Absent overriding issues and those kinds of things, which have their own negative outcomes, not just in Weymouth, but everywhere else. But I'm curious, the strategic investment budget would be one that, and again, to get the public to understand, I don't know how many people watch the school improvement plan presentation, school by school, at school committee meetings, but you know, the data's out there on DESE, and to communicate the realities of the serious challenges of where our students are academically. I mean, the district's goal for success is a 60% student failure rate. That's the state average on MCAS for ELA, for math, for science and technology. That's the goal. That's a horrible goal. You know, so I wouldn't call this necessarily aspirational based upon that being the goal. You know, I'm curious about what would it take to actually get Weymouth Public School students. I know that we have conversations about MCAS, whether they can't be the end all and all, you know, and be all for all kinds of student assessments, but that's what the state uses. And it's also what the federal government uses. That's it. So what would it take to, what would the strategic investment budget look like, even though it's rainbows and unicorns, Mel, to get Weymouth Public School students to something better than 60% failure rates? Because that's what the goal is right now.
An expectation.
Right.
That
But
all of our students are at whatever level we choose, right?
Well, it would be nicer if we would have, you know, 60% of students at meeting or exceeding,
Right.
you know, ELA and math or science and technology expectations in MCAS. That would be a much better number.
Right.
But to talk about a target that says that our threshold is, we're going to celebrate if we meet the state average of 60% failure.
Right.
I'm just suggesting that we still need to communicate what is the budget and the list of positions that would be required to turn that around, to move the needle, because it hasn't moved in years. This isn't a COVID situation. Our MCAS numbers have been below the state average for years, even pre-COVID. What would it take to move that needle, to turn that stuff around? So having said all of that, I think you need to be bluntly honest with everybody. And I'm looking at school committee here as well, at school committee meetings, and say, this is the scenario right here, a $3 million cut that's going to translate into all of these staff positions. Community, start paying attention now, because come January, February, March, it's going to be way too late.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Gus, because that is kind of the thought process of whether it's 1% to whatever that percentage is, that there's clarity of, that would mean, you know, whatever, like what this program would go away, these class sizes would be better, so that people have a very clear understanding of what would be happening.
And I think that needs to happen if you want the community to rally, as this has before, but that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
What drives it initially is the reality of the horrible scenario that we're looking at. That needs to be communicated, like, starting now.
I agree, because I feel if it's too late, we're going to be in a situation like Whitman Hanson, having the news show up after the pink slips are going out.
Right.
And we don't want that again.
No, and I recognize this. I'm retired from the corporate world, was a senior corporate executive, and we dealt with scenarios like these. And I understand the sensitivities, particularly in the educational environment, about you start to talk early about specific positions and the panic that causes. I understand that, but I would suggest that maybe some of that panic is necessary, and that parents need to recognize that their school's English teacher or fourth grade teacher or third grade teacher is going to be potentially losing their job, or numbers of those teachers, or at the middle school or at the high school, whatever those positions are going to be, to get that reality out there so that people react now, when it's too late.
Athletics, they reacted. I do feel like we're better prepared this year than we were last year. I do feel like we had these conversations way late last year. And I do feel like it's the start of the negative, I guess. But I do appreciate that we have this information now versus.
Yeah, and we're just always careful. We don't ever want the harm of our children to be our platform of what's going to happen to your child, so it's sad, because we know what that does to classrooms and morale and all of that. So, but it's, we'll walk that line this year.
It's a challenge. Obviously, it's a tough one, but I would also then add to that, if we have our student population at 60% failure rate based on MCAS, if this disaster 1% scenario is in fact what gets implemented with whatever required cuts takes place, where's that number going?
Yeah.
It's not going to be going up, and everybody needs to recognize that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I know Mel's touched on it too, that we talk about education and school department here, but it's this historical fiscal pressures are being impacted all over town for all essential public services. So schools, if we talk about cuts, police, fire, DPW, water, library. So I think it'll be across the board, not just across Weymouth, across the state. Sure.
Yeah, recognize that. And Danielle, if I may, one thing. And I know we have to do more advocacy on the town side, right? You heard me at the public hearing, sort of chastising our counselors who sit on their hands. The education subcommittee hasn't met in 11 years. And I suggested to them last year that they should be spending more time deliberating over a school budget that was going to be $1.9 million shortfall for fiscal year 26. And there was absolutely no commentary, no action, no reaction. I think we need to press town hall to be a little bit more attentive, and perhaps they will be with a few changes of faces over there as well. So we'll see what takes place with that. Thanks.
Yep. All right, anybody else? No? You want to check on?
Yeah, so I think if folks type in the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, you can type in the Q&A and we'll see it. Just the hosts will see it here.
I like the good sense.
I take that as no question.
No questions. I will take motion to adjourn. So moved. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Thanks. Thank you.